So my name is Olga Block. I am a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist. And what that means is that I help people with relationships. My focus is in terms of communication, facilitating understanding, and the process that I use is mindfulness and meditation and helping people connect more with their bodies in order to become present so they can make choices that honor what's most important to them. So in a nutshell, that's a little bit of my practice. I am married and I have 3 kids. I have a 14-year-old son in high school. I have a 12-year-old son in middle school, and I have a 9-year-old daughter in elementary school. So I'm also in the trenches in terms of parenting, and I understand what it feels like, and I understand what it's like to be a working parent and juggling many balls and many activities, and the weekends to drive people everywhere. It's, a challenge. So I definitely understand struggles of parenting. So just a few logistical things to share. So I am videotaping this talk. The videotape is just on me. And the reason why I do this is to make it available to everyone on YouTube. It's free of charge. So sometimes people who attend my workshops want to watch it again, or they want to watch it with their loved ones so they can share the knowledge that they learned, especially if there's one parent that couldn't be here tonight. Also, when I have new clients, I encourage them to look me up on YouTube just to see my approach and my philosophies and what I work on, so people can have a baseline understanding, because oftentimes during session, the psychoeducational piece kind of gets lost because there isn't enough time. So I find that it's a really great resource for people to have in the community, and so that's why it's videotaped. If any of you feel uncomfortable, please let me know. I'll be happy to accommodate your level of comfort. But again, it's just focused on me, and it's just to help other people as well. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions, concerns? No? Okay. So my talk is about an hour long, and then it'll give us about 20 minutes for questions and answers. However, I will give everybody a warning. I talk a lot, so sometimes it's difficult for me to stop right on the hour, but I promise you I will do my very best to keep it concise. But I'm very passionate about this information, and I am so grateful for the opportunity to come and share this with you. So I touch here, right? Okay, great. So what I'd like to start with is like a self check-in. And what I mean by this is we're going to jump right in to the experience of mindfulness. And so if you could either with your eyes open or closed, whatever you feel most comfortable, we are going to create an exercise and an experience of what it's like in your body. So if you could just take 3 deep breaths in. And in this breathing, make sure that you focus on your belly. 2. And 3. So as you continue to keep your eyes closed, just take a moment to connect with your body. And just notice what you're feeling right now. And what it's like for you to just connect with your body. Some of you may be tired, some of you may have a headache, some of you may be stressed, some of you may be happy. So there's different feelings that are going on, but this is just an opportunity to kind of slow down and check in with yourself. And as you're connecting with yourself, notice what's really important to you. Like what really matters right here and right now. What is really important? And it can be something about yourself or something about your relationships, something perhaps that you're struggling with, something that really matters. And if you notice, a lot of your decisions in your life will focus around this, what really matters to you. So as you're connecting with what's important to you, take a moment to just appreciate yourself. To just connect with how hard you try, how much you care, how much you want things to turn out a certain way, the effort that you put forth. And so just take a moment to say thank you. I appreciate myself. that even though things may not turn out exactly as I want them to, I'm doing my very best. And my very best is good enough. So it's just the experience of allowing that where you are right now is exactly where you need to be. So as you take another just deep breath in, when you're ready, just feel free to open your eyes. So welcome. Tonight's talk is not necessarily about focusing on how to change your child's behavior. It's much more about focusing in your internal world, and when you're present to what's happening inside of you, your relationship with your child will change. So there are some techniques that I will impart along the way, but it's not focused so much on like the parenting aspect as it is much more on the mindfulness component of it. So what is mindfulness? It seems to be such a popular term. It's in the news, it's in magazines. So mindfulness is the intentional, accepting, and non-judgmental focus of one's attention on emotions, thoughts, and sensations occurring in the present moment, which can be trained by meditational practices derived from Buddhism. And I got this quote from Wikipedia because I found 7 million websites that had the definition. So I'm like, you know something, Wikipedia is like the neutral one to choose. So the key to mindfulness is being in the present moment. And that is particularly important in parenting because in parenting, we are so attached to this relationship. We so much want to give our children the best. We so want them to succeed that the only resource that we have automatically, by default, is our past. So we will immediately go to the past to parent our child. We will either do what our parents did or we will do what they didn't do. And it's based on our own experiences and based on what we didn't get, right? So if there were no Christmases in your house, you will have the world's biggest Christmas tree, right? If your family didn't go on vacation, you guys are going to have the world's greatest vacation, right? So you try to overcompensate for whatever it is that you didn't get as a child, and so that's completely past-based. And then when your child behaves in a way that perhaps you didn't behave like that to your parents, you don't know what to do because you don't have that map of how to navigate, because I surely wasn't like this, so now what do I do? Right? So a lot of parenting is based on the past, or the other piece of parenting is based on the future. Will they succeed? Will they get into college? What friends will they have? Who will they marry? Will they live out in the street? Right? Like, are they going to live under a bridge? Right? So there's lots of these fears that we have. And so we very rarely spend time in the present. And so mindfulness is an opportunity to strengthen your ability to be in the present. And so today I will share with you how to go about doing that. But at any time, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so if meditation is the tool to mindfulness, let's start with how do you meditate? Before I got into this mindfulness chapter of my career, I used to think that meditation was something that like Buddhist monks did and you had to like keep your mind blank. So like after yoga, the lady is like, you know, meditate or calm your mind or whatever. I'm like, I can't do this because I'm always thinking of like 7 million things. And so I remember when I first started practicing mindfulness, I did a guided meditation and the lady in the guided meditation said, bring your attention to the present moment. And my first feeling was of total and utter fear. I became so scared because my immediate thought was, if I bring my attention to the present moment, how am I going to remember all the 7,000 things I have in the back of my head? It's like I have these balls that I'm juggling in the back of my head, and then you're asking me to drop them all. And if I drop them, I'm not going to remember to pick them up, right? So it was a very frightening experience, and I actually got present to how scared I was of being present because I'm constantly thinking of other things, right? While I'm making dinner, I'm answering a text message, and then I'm checking homework, and then I'm feeding the dog, and I'm doing it all at the same time. So once I started practicing meditation and I removed the expectations of what it should look like, it became actually a tremendous resource in my personal life. And in a little bit, I'll share some more stories about that. But so how do you meditate? Preferably a quiet space. doesn't necessarily need to be a quiet space, but preferably, especially in the beginning, because the whole premise of meditation is not to keep your mind blank or to stop you from thinking, but it's for you not to follow your thoughts and to be able to separate that you are a person that exists outside of your thinking. And so oftentimes we have like this running dialogue in the back of our heads. And it could even be happening like right now, right? Like, oh my God, did my kid do their homework? Did they feed the dogs? Did they, did they study? Am I going to be home on time? What's going to happen tomorrow, right? So there's all these things that we constantly are worrying about. And the premise of meditation is those thoughts will continue, but just not to pay attention to them. They become like background noise. And so eyes can be opened or closed. The premise of meditation is to bring presence to your attention. Focus on breath and let go of thoughts, right? So you focus on your breath. Now, it doesn't only have to be your breath. Whoever invented meditation thought that breathing was like the easiest thing to focus on, right? Because it's something that is constant and you have control over. But it doesn't necessarily need to be breathing. It can be walking, any action that you can do repetitively to bring your attention back to the present moment. So your breath is just an easy way to use it. That when you feel like your mind is, like for example, if you feel like your mind is focusing on too many things at once, and you cannot bring your attention to the present moment, if you focus on your breath, your thoughts will begin to have less hold on you. And in having that less hold, you begin to have the experience of less anxiety. The same way that we did a little bit with the self-check-in. It was just kind of like, let's just slow down a bit. So preferably sitting, but it doesn't have to be. You can be laying down or you can be standing up. It could be during a walk, as long as you're bringing your attention to the present mind. And during your walk, you may get distracted. You may look at a bird or a dog or a stick or a leaf, and then you bring your focus again to the present time. So when your thoughts distract you, go back to focusing on your breath. So you can start with 5 minutes and then gradually increase. It doesn't have to be something that's very long. It doesn't have to be an hour, 2 hours. It doesn't have to be anything that is exorbitant. The key to meditation is the regularity of it. Even if you do it once a week, but that you create a regular space and time for you to be able to do this. And it can be guided, or it can be with music or silence. The guided meditations are usually helpful, especially in the beginning, because there'll be someone who can help you deepen your thoughts, deepen your experience, deepen your presence, increase your awareness in terms of what's happening in your body. What I did in the beginning of today is more of a guided meditation, but with music, there's like a great station on Pandora, or you can listen to like a meditation CD or a massage CD as well. That's also really helpful. They usually don't have words, so it's not very distracting, or silence as well. I personally find that a little bit difficult because I have 3 kids and 2 dogs and a cat. So sometimes my dogs will come and, sniff my hand or sniff my feet, but I'm meditating, so they kind of know, and then they leave me alone. So benefits of meditation. It reduces pain and enhances the body's immune system. Now, all of this information has been researched. I cannot cite the research information, but I do know that there's extensive research on meditation. Reduces feelings of depression, anxiety, anger, and confusion. Increases blood flow and slows the heart rate. Provides a sense of calm, peace, and balance. Helps reverse heart disease. Helps control thoughts. Increases energy and reduces stress. And it's really cheap, right? So it's just like you can't go wrong with that. You don't need to buy fancy equipment. You don't go to some special training. Like, it's really very accessible to everyone. So I'm going to take a left turn here. This is a little fuzzy, but okay. I'm going to take a left turn here and go a little bit more in the scientific world, just to kind of explain why and how meditation and mindfulness relates to parenting. So This model is called the triune brain, and this is a theoretical model. It's not necessarily an anatomical model that like you'll open up your brain and you'll see these different parts. But theoretically, what neurobiologists have developed is this idea, this was developed by this Dr. McLean, that the brain is divided into three parts. And so the first part is your reptilian brain, which is your instinctive mind. And in a nutshell, it's your fight or flight response, right? It's how you deal with stress. And this part of our brain was developed like way back when we saw a tiger and we had to do something about it, so you don't have time to think. So this tiger is a threat, we perceive the threat and we run away. Or we decide to, stab the tiger or whatever. The problem with nowadays is that we are faced with a tiger all the time, but you can't see the tiger. So this part of our brain is oftentimes upregulated. We're constantly in an anxious state. There's lots of stress because in the time of the tiger would come and then the tiger would leave. And once the tiger would leave, our brain would perceive we're safe again. But in today's world, you can't point to the tiger because it's not just the tiger. It's soccer practice, it's the grades, it's the house, it's work, it's this, it's that, and it never ends. So this is the most reactive part of our brain. There is absolutely no thinking in this part of our brain. So then, as we evolved as human beings, we developed the limbic brain, which is the emotional mind. Now, in the limbic brain, there is this thing that's called the amygdala, and the amygdala perceives threat, right? So it's constantly looking for threat. Now, there was a time in history that assessing for threat was something that was really important because, again, we had this tiger and we had to look out for the tiger. Now, the people that survived were people whose amygdalas were hyperactive and were able to assess danger, and that's why they lived, because the people who were peace and love and singing Kumbaya, they probably got eaten by the tiger and they're not here to tell the story. So there was a time in history that this part of our brain was actually very valuable for our survival. But this part of our brain nowadays helps us with connection and helps us with relating to each other and having the sense of belonging. So it is still very, very valuable, but the threat response component of it becomes a lot more difficult to manage because, again, that tiger never goes away. So this part of the brain is responsible for how we feel, all of our implicit memories. Like, for example, if you can remember or not the experience of, being the last person picked in gym class, right? And all of a sudden you walk into a gym for your kid's parent-teacher conference and you have this feeling like, oh my God, I hate being here. That's your implicit memory. You don't necessarily recall the event, but you know that being in that gym doesn't make you feel so good. So the neocortex, or the analytical mind, this is the last part of our brain that has been developed. And in children, it's not fully formed and fully developed till the age of 25. So that's why when teenagers behave the way that they do, they oscillate between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic brain. Sometimes they can behave like mature people, and sometimes they revert back to very emotional, reactive children. So the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that helps us learn, that helps us analyze, that helps us observe our own behavior and see, wow, what could I have done differently? So for us as parents, right, when we have our kids in the morning and we want to give them a good breakfast and we want to make sure that they go off to school and we put on their coats and we hug them and we wish them well, what we're actually doing is we are kind of loving and caressing this part of their brain, so this part of their brain feels safe, so then this part of their brain is open. Right? Because in the morning, if you are having a big fight with your child, or if your daughter didn't want to brush her hair, right, or her teeth, or is eating a lollipop for breakfast, and then the mother happens to lose her cool, right, her prefrontal cortex is not going to be as open. Right? And she will be much more reactive until, of course, she sees her lovely teacher, and then her lovely teacher will comfort her, and then her prefrontal cortex opens up again. So this is just one example, but there's lots of times where when we become reactive, our prefrontal cortex shuts down and we go completely limbic. And this is when you have read, like, let's say 10 or 15 or 20 parenting books and you know what to do, but then something triggers inside of you and all of that knowledge like flies out the door. That's because you're in limbic system. And limbic system is going to look for one thing: am I safe? What's the safety of this situation? How can I control this situation? So it's our natural tendency to always be assessing for danger and threat. And nowadays, danger and threat means you need to listen to what I say. Why? Because our window of tolerance with the level of stress that we have is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And so if we don't have a big window of tolerance, our kids begin to not have a big window of tolerance. And the reason why that is because kids can pick up on how we feel. Right? Like, how many of us believe that our kids can feel our stress? Right? Like, they can feel our stress, but we're not really aware of it. At least I know that I can be stressed because I'm trying to get you to soccer practice and it's raining and your brother didn't finish his homework and then the dog peed on the rug and what am I supposed to do, right? Why can't you understand that I'm trying to get you to soccer practice, right? But the thing is that it's not necessarily about a cognitive thing. It's about the feeling of stress that gets transmitted between two people. Right, so I'm just kind of setting up this picture just to kind of show how it relates to mindfulness. Okay, so stressors of parenting. I know everybody knows this, but I just outlined them anyway. So it's difficult, right? We have to worry about consistency, consequences, encouragement, responsibility. We care a lot about the result. We struggle with the effectiveness of our strategies. Is it really working? Like, if I take your phone away, are you going to learn? If you don't watch TV, are you going to be nicer to your sister or to your brother, right? If I don't let you go out on the weekend, does that mean you're going to do your homework? Like, right? Like, is what I'm doing really working, right? We're afraid of the environment, right? Safety, drugs, outside influences. Like with my freshmen in high school, on the weekends, I'm like, were there drugs there? Did you say no? Please tell me you said no. It's like, Mom, relax. I don't do that, right? But it's just like the fear of him falling into that. And then the black hole that what am I going to do, right? So there's all of this anxiety and worry about the outside influences, things that you can't even control. We're overscheduled, we're stressed, we're tired. So there's lots of factors that are going on in parenting. And what's really unfortunate is that the way that we live now is not how we are designed to live. We are designed to live like in communities and in groups and to help each other out. We're not designed to live in this individual, competitive, single-family homes where people have to worry about themselves. Like, how we were designed to live is in a tribe and how we support each other, and that support is lacking. And so one piece, now this I completely made up. This is 100% my opinion. I did not research this, nor have I read this anywhere, but I believe this is 100% to be true. I believe that technologically we've advanced so fast that emotionally we haven't caught up to that. So it's like we have great methods of communication. What we don't have is the quality of what we're communicating about. And so there is an impact on that lack of balance because there's so much technological development and emotionally we cannot hold the speed of that development. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes kids have access. An example is, the texting and what kids say to each other, right? There's a depersonalization of relationships. So the person who invented texting thought that it was a really great idea so people don't have to call each other and you circumvent the whole awkwardness of having to say hello or having a whole conversation and you can just say, I'm late, right? So it makes it a lot faster. But the person who invented texting did not do it with the intention to dismantle communication. They actually did it to create faster communication. But that faster communication has an impact, right? So it's like, let's go back even further. The guy who invented the washing machine, right? So let's say there was a period of time where people would walk to the river to wash their clothes. And then this guy invents a machine, and so now people aren't walking to the river anymore. And so yes, the clothes are washed, but the experience of walking to the river, the sharing of the walking to the river, the whole sociological part of doing that activity has been lost because now we have this machine and we don't have to walk down to the river anymore. Isn't that great? And it's like, well, it is, but it's not, right? So I believe that technology has really played a detriment in the quality of our relationships. But that's just my soapbox for 5 minutes. So how to practice mindfulness with your family? Like, how in God's name do I do this, Olga, right? Like, okay, please put another thing on my plate that I got to do, right? Like, that's not what this is about. So my approach was to try to make it as simple as possible so it doesn't feel like something else to do. So one thing is that you can do it yourself and say, listen, I just want to try this for myself outside of including my kids, because if I start including my kids, it might be a little too difficult or overwhelming. So let me just see how this works for myself, right? So you just focus on yourself, and you can do it for 5 minutes, either in the morning or at night, and it's something that's private, right? And so sometimes I have even meditated in my car. I'll be early for a meeting, I'll turn off my car, it's quiet, and I can just sit there and close my eyes. And so it just gives me an opportunity to connect within myself. And it's as simple as the little exercise that we did in the beginning. Do mindful movement exercises with your kids. In the paper that I gave you in the back, there's lists of references and resources. There's a book called Mindful Movements, and there's lots of books, and there's stuff for kids, and then there's stuff for adults. Those are 10 movements, and they're simple. They're just like raising your arms and breathing, right? It's just to help kids practice being in the present moment. You can do this before dinner, before bath time, before bedtime, anything that's going to help them just connect with their bodies, especially because as kids get older, the message that they have about their bodies is, let's objectify our bodies as much as possible. Like, how hot do you look? How sexy do you dress? How athletic are you? Right? Like, do you have muscles? Do you have hair? Do you not have hair? So instead of going down that objectifying route, begin to create a healthy relationship with your body in terms of presence. Teach your kids breathing techniques and ask, what do you notice? Right? So what I mean by breathing techniques is just taking a deep breath in and take a deep breath out. And what do you notice? What does that feel like? Does that feel good? Does that feel weird? Does that feel different? Is that new to you? Right? So just kind of notice what's going on with their breath. Create a peaceful place together, either imaginary or real. Right? This peaceful place is a great resource for kids to go, especially if they feel stressed at school, before a test, if on the playground somebody didn't pick them or they weren't included, their feelings are hurt, right? And you can create an imaginary peaceful place. You can draw a peaceful place. You can do a collage with a peaceful place. So there's lots of different techniques that you can do to help solidify this place of peace. And what does peace feel like, right? And this could even be a dinner conversation, right? Like, what brings you peace? How do you know that you feel at peace? Right? Just to kind of help them connect with that part. And even ask yourselves that question, right? Like, what brings me peace? And, I used to have this thing, I'm going to confess right now. I used to have this thing that I'm like, wow, when my kids grow up, I'll finally have my life back. And I was like actually really excited. And then I realized that in being excited about having my life back, I was missing the life that I had here. And I'm like, this is not working. And I'm like, I'll deal with my life in the future later. I'm going to enjoy the life that I have now. And it's not that I necessarily wasn't enjoying it, but I was so focused on what was going to happen in the future that this was just something that I was managing, right? So in becoming more conscious and more present, I am bringing my awareness to this moment and creating the connections that I want at this time. Sit quietly with your kids for a few minutes with your kids before bed. I needed to prove that, whatever. Before bed is a very key moment because there's a very tender openness at that time. So if you want to practice breathing techniques, even if it's like 2 or 3 deep breaths before going to bed, that's very helpful. But under here, 4 opportunities to connect every day with your kids. Every day, there's 4 times that you can connect with your kids. When you wake up in the morning, when you guys say goodbye to each other, when you meet again at the end of the day, and before you go to bed. So you can pick any of those 4 times to connect with them, to make eye contact, to check in with their bodies, to check in with their breathing. So these are just little ways to begin to incorporate mindfulness in your life. So benefits of mindfulness in parenting. Incorporating mindfulness into your parenting practices allows you to have more patience with your child's reactions. Now, maybe I'm the only one, right? But sometimes when my kids behave in a certain way, I'm a different human being. Because in my head, the first thought is, this is not happening. right? This is not supposed to be happening. And then I'll go through like a litany, and this happens in a flash, a litany in the back of my head, not only of like all the things I've done, like I'm a really nice person and I work really hard, and can't you see how hard I work? And you're doing this, right? So that's my reactive brain, because when I am in my prefrontal cortex, I can say, this is developmentally appropriate, and I can understand that they're challenging boundaries, right? And I can totally hold the space that they need to learn how to become responsible, respectful human beings. However, if I'm not taking care of myself, their challenges all of a sudden becomes a challenge to my being, to my sense of parenthood. It becomes like a threat, like I am not doing a good job. If you're behaving this way, I must be doing something wrong, right? So that thinking is really tricky, because we cannot take responsibility for our kids' behaviors. Our job is just to hold the space so they can see it themselves, and then we guide them so they can make the changes. But that's really hard. It doesn't happen so easily. So have more compassion for your limitations, right? So if I feel like I'm going to lose it, can I have that time to just take a deep breath in and to say, I need a minute here? Right? I'm not going to make this mean anything. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad mom. It doesn't mean that you're a bad kid. It doesn't mean anything. Let me just take a deep breath, and I'll talk to you in a second. Greater emotional openness and receptivity, right? In becoming more emotionally open, what I mean by that is to expand your window of tolerance. Now, window of tolerance is our ability to withhold emotional, the back and forthness of feelings. And so there are people that have very narrow windows of tolerance, and then there are other people that have very wide ones. So when you have a narrow emotional window of tolerance, this side of the window, the left side, I mean, it could be left or right, but for the sake of the example, the left side, you become hyper aroused, which means little things trigger you, right? Stop with that noise, the dog is barking, whatever, right? Like this is when you're hyper aroused. The other side of that is hypo aroused, which is you don't really care. The dishes could be in the sink, the kids could be fighting, the dog just pooped on the ground. I don't care, I give up, I'm out to lunch, right? You just check out, right? So we all have this, but we all have this at varying degrees, right? And so the object of the game is how can we expand this window of tolerance so we can remain present, we can continue to parent our children, and we don't have to be reactive or we don't have to be resigned, right? It's about creating that healthy middle, because once you create that healthy middle, you're also creating the openness for your own kids as well. When you do get upset, your recovery time is faster, right? So and there is also research to corroborate this, is that with meditation, it's not that you don't ever get upset, but when you do get upset, you don't hold on to it as long. You get upset and then you're able to let it go a lot faster. That's the key, is that the recovery time is a lot faster. Increased ability to observe without judgment, right? So if you observe, you can reflect to your child and help them see their own behavior. Slowing reactivity rates boosts trust and safety in the relationship, which is opening that window of tolerance. Now, the safety and trust in the relationship also blends into the whole attachment pattern, in which how do kids attach to their parents? Can they trust you? Can they share what's going on in their inner world with you? Have you created a place that is safe enough that they look to you as a resource? Now, the key is to continue to strengthen that through their adolescent years. Because if you can continue to strengthen that dynamic through their adolescent years, they will share with you what their struggles are, rather than try to solve them on their own with their limited amount of tools. And the only way, at least that I know from the research and my personal life, to continue to foster that trust is to remove judgment. How can you parent without judgment? And in mindfulness, you practice letting that go. You even begin to get present as to how judgment infiltrate your thoughts. Because judgment, you can't really tell. You're like, well, I thought that was my opinion. It's just like, no, that's judgment, right? So it's really easy to get confused. So increases presence, eye contact, and emotional refueling. And a little bit, I'll go deeper into that because of the exercises that we're going to do. Okay. So I threw this slide in here, not necessarily because it has anything to do with mindfulness, but because in every parenting talk I give, the parents take pictures of this slide. And the reason why is because people really appreciate the difference between consequences and punishments. Consequences sometimes has the feeling of it being a euphemism for punishments. Like, I'm just going to say consequences because I really don't want to tell you that I'm punishing my child because I'm really frustrated and fed up with how they're behaving, right? So what's the difference between these two things? Consequences teaches to repair mistakes, has an opportunity for growth, teaches personal responsibility, and gives child tools to self-regulate. Right? So how can I calm myself down? How can I take responsibility for my actions? How can I have an awareness of, my behavior and the impact on other family members? That's the tricky part. Oftentimes, kids have a really hard time understanding and being aware that their behavior influences everyone. It sets the mood for the family. If you go away on vacation and you have one child that's not in the flow of the vacation, your vacation could be ruined, right? Or holidays or every day. Like, the environment of a family is a collective effort, right? So consequences help them raise their awareness of that collective effort. Punishment, however, reinforces lack of power, breeds further power struggles, is unrelated to the event, is used to control behavior and not to teach life skills, and creates feelings of inadequacy and shame. Now, I am not saying that I have not punished my kids, because I have, right? So like my sons, I have two sons. The 14-year-old will start apparently men do this, right? Like, they wrestle with each other, which drives me nuts because I'm a girl and I never did that. And I really don't get it and I don't like it and I get nervous and right? So they wrestle each other. And so they start with the wrestling and it's all fun and games until the little one gets shoved a little too much or gets hurt and then goes with a vengeance to the big one. And then the big one is just like, you're not going to do this to me because I'm bigger than you, and la la la. And you guys know how the story ends. So I will take away their phones. Completely unrelated. You not having your phones is not going to make you nicer to your brother, okay? Does not work, right? However, what it does work is that I'll take the phone away to get their attention. So once I get their attention, now they're going to listen because I have something that they want. So is it ideal? Is it a stellar practice? No, but for the time being, it works and I'm not hurting anyone. So the key here is, how are the two of you going to resolve this problem? And so, again, because I do what I do, my kids are really good at conflict resolution. I mean, there's lots of other things that I'm not so good at, but conflict resolution I can do. So they will actually either call me or they say, we've resolved it, we've taken responsibility, and we've apologized. So we're all good now. I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yes. I'm like, is there anything inside that you still hold on to? And they're like, no, Mom, we're good. Can we have our phones back now? So then I'll give them back their phones, because as long as they repair their mistakes, I don't really care how long I take the phone away for. So that's what I mean, that, I'm not saying that one is good and one is bad, but I did use, a flavor of punishment to work on it as a consequence, right? So just to kind of give you a lens in terms of resources as to how is it that you are doling out consequences, and do they work in terms of what you'd like to teach your kids. So practice ideas with kids about mindfulness. Okay, so these are just simple ideas to do with kids that involve mindfulness. Taking 3 deep breaths together, palm-to-palm gaze once a day. So here's a little picture that I have. Now, the neurobiology of this simple activity is absolutely incredible, because there's been a whole surge of research on neurobiology, neurochemistry. There's a whole branch of science now called interpersonal neurobiology, which is the study of mirror neurons, which is when a mother gazes at an infant and the mother smiles at the infant smiles back, right? And so in the beginning, there's this nice back and forthness between parent and child. Well, this mirror effect happens all the time, continuously, in our relationship with our kids. But we obviously are not aware of that. And so what science is looking into is what are the areas that continues to impact a child's development in terms of not only attachment, trust, and the cortical development of the prefrontal cortex. So the palm-to-palm gaze is something that's really important, and it's really simple, just to calm down their nervous system. Because remember, our natural reaction in the nervous system is to be nervous. That's why it's called a nervous system, right? It's vigilant of danger. So we have to habitually get into the mind presence of like, how is it that I can help things relax? Right? How is it that I can help the environment in my household relax and calm down and slow down? Do an intention meditation in the morning. What I mean by that is just to kind of take a moment and say, how would you like your day to be? What do you want to happen in your day today? And just to take a deep breath in, just to kind of be mindful of, we have some semblance of say in how our day goes. And then at the end of the day, you can ask, did it happen? Was it true? Did your day go along as you planned it this morning? Right? And they could say yes or no, and then they can share with you what actually happened and why was it a no and why was it a yes. So it's just beginning to kind of plant seeds of awareness in your kids' minds. Do a self-check-in meditation at the end of the day. How am I feeling? What do I need? Right? So self-check-in is kind of like the little meditation that we did in the beginning of today, to just kind of take some breaths in, see what that felt like, what do I need? Another good question to ask kids is, was there a time that you needed help? And did you ask for it? Right? Because oftentimes kids might want to solve it themselves, or they keep it to themselves, or they don't share it. So that's also a really helpful question to check in with your child. Practice sitting with emotions and not judging them. Just observe. Like, what do you notice? So, for example, when our child has, let's say, a negative emotion, like they're angry or they're disappointed or their friend canceled the play date or whatever, our natural tendency is to want to make it better. Let me make you not feel this way. Let me call another friend. Let's see what else we can do. Let's go to the mall. I'll take you bowling. Let's go out with my sister. Whatever it might be, like, because we want to make it better. Right? So what we're teaching without meaning to is that bad emotions are bad and we don't want to feel them, and that good emotions are good and we only want to feel those. And so then what happens is, when we feel bad, we don't know what to do with them, because it's just like, ooh, I'm not supposed to feel this, right? So then we're going to go do something. We'll either go shopping or watch TV or cleaning or walk the dog or yell at our husbands or whatever, right? Like, because we don't want to feel this way. So the key is to help kids, again, expand that window of tolerance and be able to be with negative emotions. And you ask them, what's it like for you? It is yucky. Yes, you are sad. And so now, do you want to do something about it? Do you not? Ask them, what do they need? Right? Because when we judge, then we cannot create the space for them to have that feeling. Help your child develop an emotional vocabulary. How did that make you feel? Especially boys. Please, 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 I beg you. Teach your kids how to identify their feelings. I am telling you this because I have men that come in my office, and every time I ask them, how do you feel? The word is good, bad, frustrated. Like, that's the extent of their emotional vocabulary. So what I'll do is, there's these cards that have different names of feelings. I got them on Amazon. And I'm like, let's go through these cards to help you identify. Do you ever feel like this, or do you feel like this? Right? Because our emotional vocabulary becomes so limited that our resources to solve how we feel is equally limited. Right? So it's like, if the only tool you have is a hammer, your life better be full of nails. Because if you don't have a nail, you're going to use a hammer anyway, because that's all you know. Right? So in terms of developing an emotional vocabulary, that's the best way to guarantee that your child will learn how to get their emotional needs met, because they're able to identify them. But kids have a really hard time because they can't see them, right? Adults have a hard time because adults weren't taught how to identify their emotional vocabulary. So the more you help them put words to how they feel, the more resilient they will be in not only talking about what's going on with them, but also looking for solutions. Oh, yay. This is my favorite part. Okay, so Sharon and Jenny passed out these little bags. Is there an extra one? Are there any left?
Yeah, they're right there.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else need one?
Thank you. Does everybody have? Okay, great. Okay, so this is a meditation that you can do with your kids. Now, it's a book. I didn't make this up. It's on the back of the sheet that I gave you. And it's a story. And it was developed by a Buddhist monk. And the story goes like this. You have these 4 pebbles, and you could put them on your right side. And so you pick one pebble, and you hold it in your hand, and you help your child take a deep breath in, and to connect, and so we'll actually do it. I'm going to read it to you because I printed it out. Okay, so you take one of them, and you close your eyes, and you take a deep breath in, and as you breathe in, you say to yourself, I see myself as a flower. Breathe out, I feel fresh, flower fresh. So you're just saying this silently to yourself. I see myself as a flower. And as you breathe out, I feel fresh, flower fresh. So as you're silently reciting flower fresh to yourself, as you breathe in and out 3 times, each time you recite them, you restore the flower that is inside of you. And you become fresh. Really see yourself as a flower. We human beings are a kind of flower in the garden of humanity. And every one of us is a flower. Each one of us can be a beautiful, fresh, pleasant, and lovable human being. When we have this freshness and beauty, we have a lot to offer to other people and to the world. So this is your time to connect with the flower that lives inside of you. So as you open up your eyes and you put your pebble to the side, so put it down somewhere, and then you pick another pebble. And then you close your eyes and you breathe in and you see yourself as a mountain. And breathe out, I feel solid. Mountain, solid. Silently recite the key words as you breathe in and you breathe out. I see myself as a mountain. Breathe out, I feel solid. Mountain, solid. There is a mountain within you. And when you practice sitting and walking with awareness, you grow your capacity to be solid and stable. Solidity and stability are very important for our happiness. As you connect, you breathe in, I see myself as a mountain. I breathe out, I feel solid. Mountain, solid. Open your eyes and pick another pebble. Breathing in, I see myself as still water. Breathe out, I reflect things as they truly are. Water reflecting. Calm water is beautiful. When water is still, it reflects nature as it really is. When we learn how to mindfully breathe in and breathe out, we are like still water. We make ourselves still and calm. We can breathe in and out and become calm and serene. Then we can see things as they really are, not get caught in fear and blame or anger. We have the capacity for great clarity that is the still water within us. Breathe in, I see myself as still water. Breathe out, I reflect things as they truly are. Water reflecting. So as you open up your eyes and you set down your pebble and you pick up your last and final pebble. And as you breathe in, I see myself as space. Breathe out, I feel free. Space, free. We need to have space in us to be happy. Having enough space helps us experience freedom and joy. Without space, we cannot be happy or peaceful. When we look at a table, we may think that it's made of only wood. But scientists tell us that the table is made mostly of space. It's hard to believe, but the amount of wood in the table is actually very small. Our bodies and consciousness are like this. We may think we are only made up of bones, organs, blood, and muscles, but if we look closely, we also see we are made of our consciousness, emotions, and many other things. Breathing in and out, we recognize that there's a lot of space within us. To feel free, we need to have space, and so do our loved ones. When we practice in a way that cultivates calm, space inside of us, we become free and happy. So as you pick up your 4 pebbles, and you hold them in your hand, and you take another deep breath in, we practice in order to restore the flower within. We practice in order to restore the mountain within. We practice in order to restore the still water within. We practice in order to restore the space within. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So this is a really cute exercise to help kids be really present to these 4 different elements. And what I really particularly like, so I'm going to be a therapist here for a second, what I really liked is the metaphorical value of these 4 elements. Because for my therapist mind, flower is the self-esteem, mountain is groundedness and security, water is the ability to observe and reflect, and space is our ability to attach securely. And what I mean by that is in secure attachment, relationships have space to come and go. Now, that is a little tricky for us because we have really very deep ingrained patterns of attachment. And what I mean by that is we emotionally, we can only tolerate so much. So there are certain people that want to be close, 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 close all the time. They can't get enough. And then there are people that are like, whoa, you're too close, right? You know, I need my space, leave me alone, right? And so that personal, emotional space, I'm not talking about physical space, but emotional space that we need is different in every person. Now, usually women will have the tendency to want a greater closeness and men will be like, no, that's too much, right? So that's like the typical pattern. Not every woman, not every man, and each person is different, and there's lots of different attachment patterns. However, the idea of talking to your kids about space, you begin to talk to them about what are their needs. And not necessarily that you need to ask them like that, or that might be too elevated of a conversation for them, but to begin to talk to them about the space of a friendship. You know, can they be together with their friends all the time, or can they let them go and have other friends? You know, do they need you to be with them all the time, or can they let go and be okay knowing that you'll be back, right? So what's the emotional flexibility in the space between the relationship? And that's something that very seldom we have the opportunity to talk about because it is very difficult to even begin to identify that. So true to form, I finished at 8 o'clock, 8:02. So I'm very proud of myself. So resources, these are the books that I have on the list. I also included some other stuff that didn't fit in my PowerPoint. I won't go over them because I don't want to go over time. So thank you so much. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share this information. It's very important to me, and so I hope that you have found it helpful and that it will help you in creating deeper connections and connected communication with your kids. So thank you so much. Thank you. If you, for whatever reason, need, some people ask me for the PowerPoint, some people ask me for articles, some people ask me for more information. If you would like me to contact you for any reason, feel free to leave me your email. I will be happy to answer you back. However, if I don't, it's usually, or if I don't email you, it's usually because I couldn't understand your email, so feel free to email me. I have a card that was passed out.
Ran out.
Oh, you ran out?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a card that says 21 ways to say good for you. And I'd be happy to mail you some as well. So does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I am a staff member. A couple of us are here. I love this. I also am a parent, 3 sons. So I feel like I've been using some of this, but how can, or can you give us a tip or two on how some of what you've mentioned can be used in classes?
Oh, excellent. Okay, yay. So there's like these tests, like MSA used to be, and then they changed it to something else, the PACE or the PAC or the PARC, that one. Okay, so I love teachers and I love school, but like oftentimes like my kids will come home and they're like, tomorrow is the park, right? I need to get to bed early. You better feed me a good breakfast, right? Like there's like this thing that happens in the school when the test is gonna come. Like I don't know what it is, but it's like the test is coming, the test is coming, the test is coming, but today's the test. So if you could actually do like a self check-in like I did in the beginning, and it's 2 minutes to have them close their eyes and take a deep breath in. And you can even just do, instead of doing like the 4 things, to do like a mountain. I'm solid, I'm grounded, I'm gonna do great on this test, and I'm gonna try my very best. And so to just kind of, right, it can be before a test, it can be before some social event, because some kids get really anxious around social events. It can be at any time that you want to get the group to have a common anchor. Anytime that you start feeling like the energy of the group, that it's like scattered, and it's really easy for it to be scattered because again, I find that technology has like scattered our brains. So like TV and all these things like don't help us be focused. It helps us be numb, right? So if you notice that your kids aren't like really paying attention, or if you have to reprimand them or call their attention too many times, you may want to do that as well. And it can be just simple. Let's just take 3 breaths together for a minute, and that's it.
I can do that.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Does anybody have any other questions?
You mentioned boys need more emotional vocabulary. What do you think girls need more of?
Oh, good question. Okay, so boys and girls are really different because their brains are wired differently. And so girls will come home and actually tell you how their day was and who they ate lunch with, and Susie said this and Bobby did that. And so like it's kind of like this whole, yeah, like journaling of their day. It's like the news feed of their day. A couple of things. I find that girls, they get really caught up in having other people like them, right? And so it's a really tricky thing of like, how do you create the experience of, yes, it's important to fit into a group, and yet don't give your sense of self up, right? Like, don't like go into such pleaser mode that you forget what's important to you, right? So I find that the mindfulness practice is helpful in grounding them in what's important to them, right? So if there's like the first thing that kind of like jumps into my mind is to help them connect with what's important to them, right? So like if I were to like fast forward into couples, women in the couple session have a much harder time saying what they want. They'll tell you what they don't want, right? I don't like that he does this. I don't like that he does that. I don't like that. Okay, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. That's got to be so hard for you. La, 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 la. What is it that you do want? And it's like, I want him not to do that. And it's like, yeah, but you're still not telling me what you want, right? And so in relationships, the pattern usually is women have a hard time telling you what they want, and men have a hard time talking about their feelings and the impact of this ambivalence. Yes?
So that just made me think, and so I sat in this summer on a meeting with the school, and we were talking about, similar to what you're saying, offering these language frames to give kids the vocabulary to actually express themselves in a way that actually was articulate and shows that they understood what they learned, instead of the thingy goes with the thingy, and they might understand it but they can't express it. And that I was thinking about that when you were talking about giving the language and giving the ability. So oftentimes, you know, I'll ask, and my kids are different ages, but the younger one is just full of emotion and she can't quite, you know, put the words around it. So using that language of not just how do you feel, but are there prompts that are, you don't want to give them what they're feeling. On the other hand, you need to pull it out.
Yes, and so you give them, okay, there's a few things you can do. There are these little feeling cards. I got them on Amazon, and they're specifically made for kids. They're really great because they have like little funny pictures on them. But you do want, so kids under the age of 8, they have like 4 basic feelings, right? Which is mad, glad, sad, and afraid. Right, that's basically it. So you can help them. It's kind of like with primary colors, right? So as you get older, you mix the primary colors, and every color derives from those 3 primary colors. So with those 4 feelings, just help them identify which one it is. And so, discouraged is the cousin of sad, right? Rage is the brother of anger, right? So that's when you start mixing the palette a little bit more. But in the beginning, when they're little, you want to focus just on those 4. And so, wow, it really seems like you're mad. Tell me, what is it that's making you mad? Right? And so the minute that you start reflecting to them their emotion, you're pulling onto their prefrontal cortex. You're pulling them out of the limbic. Now, I'll tell you what doesn't get people out of limbic, whether it be little kids or big kids, if you tell them don't feel that way, right? That pisses them off even more. So don't ever tell a person that they shouldn't feel that way, because that doesn't work, right? You should always, 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 always say, wow, you're right. That's terrible. That's horrible. Validate, validate. I can understand how you feel. Because when you validate, then the limbic system goes, oh, I'm heard. And so then they downregulate, and then they can go into the prefrontal cortex. But until the limbic system feels like they're heard, they will stamp their feet. Now, you can find like an 80-year-old woman with her 70 or let's say 60-year-old daughter, and they will have the same argument that they had like 100 years ago. I'm not good at math, but you know what I mean. And that is because the limbic system never got validated, and that daughter is still waiting for the mother to validate. But what happens is the mother didn't get validated by her mother, so, the hell if I'm going to validate you, because I didn't get my validation, so neither are you. And then the cycle just continues. Right? So the key here is we got to break it. And to break it, we have to allow people to feel how they feel. There is nothing that is a wrong feeling. They're not wrong. Everybody can feel how they feel. You're absolutely right. You should. You should be angry. This is terrible. What are we going to do about it? Right? So once you validate, then you can move to solution. Yes?
How do you strike the balance? Let's say you have the anomaly girl who isn't the regurgitator, the talker. How do you strike the balance between drawing her out to talk about feelings and emotions and not making it feel like it's always an interrogation?
Yes.
You're always putting me under the microscope.
Yes. So the way that I will confront any resistance from any one of my kids, no matter the age, is that I usually come in with the flag of surrender, right? I'm like, I'll come here to make peace, not war, and I have to just be 100% honest and authentic with you. I want to know. I worry about you. Right? Like, so you become vulnerable. You create the vulnerability. Once you create the vulnerability, then you can very gingerly ask for permission if it would be okay. And then if they say no, can you please tell me when? Because I really want to talk to you about this. Right? So I have a 14-year-old son that does not talk to me about his feelings at all. And he declared this when he was 5, right? He goes, Mommy, you're never going to get me to talk about my feelings because I'm a man. And men don't talk about their feelings. Now, I am married to like the most emotional, softest, loving man on the face of this earth. He's a physical therapist. He takes care of people, right? Like, he's very compassionate. So I'm like, where are you getting this from, right? So he was really clear. I am not talking about my feelings. And so for many years, I was just like, well, okay, he doesn't talk about his feelings. But now that he's in high school, I'm like petrified because it's just like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening inside of you. So I started talking to my husband. I'm like, I'm worried about his feelings. And my husband looks at me and he goes, what do you want me to do? I'm like, can you go in there and find out? And he goes, okay, sure. So then my son comes into the kitchen. He goes, hey, your mom's worried about your feelings. What's going on with you? Right? So he just cuts to the chase. But so when I get my son in these softer moments, I did talk to him and I said, I have to make a confession. I worry about you, not because I see you as unhappy or that you have a problem, but I worry because since you don't share what's happening with you, and in a very near future, you're going to be making decisions that are really important and that affect other people, like driving. And unless we begin to have a communication that I can 100% know what's going on inside of you, I don't feel comfortable letting you drive. Like, because I can't. And so he looked at me and he goes, Mom, are you telling me that in order for me to drive, I have to talk to you about my feelings? And I'm like, no, it's not like that. It kind of goes like this. If I go into the grocery store, I need to know how much money I have in my bank account so I can buy my groceries. And if I don't know, I get really worried about how much I'm going to spend. So it's more like that. It's just kind of like a knowing. I don't need to know like the intimate details of your life, but I just want to make sure that you're okay. Right? So I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty because obviously he's not going to tell me as much as my daughter would, and it's not something that's so comfortable to him. But I want to create that openness kind of a thing. But it's gentle and it's slow and there's a lot of validation and there's a ton of respect. Like you let them open the door. Like, can I come in? And you ask for permission. Can I come in? Can I come in? And you may need to ask quite a few times. And then they might say, you can come in this much. Okay, I'll take it. And so then you're like, okay, can I come in a little more? Right? So it kind of goes like that. Yes?
Related to like teachers in the classroom and consequences versus punishment, what do you think is a good recipe to have, like, for example, say in a classroom where, you know, too much noise and the teacher might give a pop quiz as like punishment or consequence? What is that? Do you feel that's a good?
Okay, the tricky part is that I'm not a teacher, right? And I really admire the fact that there are human beings that have the courage to spend 8 hours with like 30 kids. Like, wow. So I don't really know because that's not my department. But yeah, I don't even know like what the impact of the kids would be, right? Like maybe they calm down because they're on a quiz. I don't know. I don't know.
I just didn't know the balance of, you know, powerlessness versus
Well,
learning from it.
the only thing that kind of makes me scratch my head is that if you're using a pop quiz to control your class, how many pop quizzes are you going to give in a week, right? Like, and then if the pop quizzes stop working, like, are you going to give like unit tests every like, half an hour? Right? Like, so you got to be really careful of not painting yourself into a corner, right? Whatever parenting I do, I got to be able to stand on what it is that I'm saying. And, what is it that I'm not addressing? Right, so there might be something that's not being addressed. And again, I'm a huge believer in bringing kids' consciousness to the group. And what I mean by that is bring the consciousness of the classroom. Like, what's it like for you guys to be in a classroom where people are behaving this way, right? And when you begin to raise the awareness to that perspective, you're beginning to raise their awareness in that their own personal behavior contributes to the impact of the classroom. And the same is with a family, right? Like we have kids that nowadays are so used to basically like life revolving around them, right? Like when I grew up and, maybe my parents were like an older generation, but I mean, they loved me, but they weren't driving me places. And, I was like a couple, and this is gonna sound awful, and I don't mean, I was very loved and taken care of, but I was like a couple steps above furniture, right? Like my parents weren't asking me like where I wanted to go on vacation. They weren't asking me like what I wanted to do for my birthday. It was like, here's your cake, you're another year older, remember to change the number, and happy birthday, and here's your gift. And that was the end of it, right? Like it wasn't like as big as it is now. And I mean, I do it too. So kids have a much more reinforced egocentric perception of the world. And unfortunately, it's a disservice because what I find, and I do therapy through Skype as well. So when I see teenagers and they go off to college, they have a really hard time managing the reality and the weight of responsibility. And I do believe that it's related to how we raise our kids. But then again, the flip side of that is it's so difficult to do it differently because this is kind of like the environment that we live in unless we go move to like Tibet or something. Just, again, my soapbox. Yes?
So, great techniques. How do you start? How do you broach that with your kids, your partner?
Excellent. So it just depends of the dynamics in your family. Okay, so like for example, I'm already known in my household as a person who tries new and different things, and so it's just like, oh, here comes mom with her cockamamie ideas, right? But there are other families that don't embrace change that much. So you could bring it up at the dinner table in terms of, well, who here feels stressed, or do we even know what stress is, right? To just kind of put your finger on the pulse of what is stressful. And so if you can begin to identify the level of stress in your family, whether it be in your partner or with your kids, it's a really great segue to say, well, you know, there's a solution that I recently learned, and I'm wondering if anybody's interested in trying something different. And if the answer is no, then you say, okay, great, I'm going to try it for a week, and then next week we'll have a conversation about what I found out. How about that? Right? So then you're putting it on yourself. But what you want to do is kind of like put your toe in the pool rather than like, okay, kids, from now on, we're going to meditate for 10 minutes before dinner, right? So it's about very gently and gingerly, because I will tell you this, as many as crazy ideas I have brought to my family. So we used to do like these questions, and my oldest son was just like, ugh, please, not again. Right? And so once I started practicing meditation very recently, like probably in the beginning of the summer, right? That I do it regularly. Like I've been familiar with it, but that I practice it every day. It's been since the beginning of the summer. And I feel really, really good. And my kids can actually tell that I feel different. And I was telling my sister how much meditation has helped me. And my son, my 12-year-old, was next to me, and he was shaking his head. He goes, she doesn't get mad as much. It's true what she's saying. So my oldest son had a test, and I could tell that he was really stressed. And I said, would you like to do this little meditation exercise, and I can help you before this test? And he goes, yes. And I was like, oh my God, I thought he was gonna, send me to go fly a kite, because here comes mom. So there are opportunities that when you see that they're struggling with something, then you can begin to interject it. Or you can also introduce the little pebbles as a game, right? And then ask them, what was that like? And you'll be surprised, they might even ask you to do it again. So it's kind of like, you gotta search for your openings. Sure. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I have a 12-year-old son, and he has always been very open. And every night we have a conversation. It's like, when are we having our conversation? And many of the teachers here actually know these stories. But since he's been to middle school, he comes home, he's exhausted, he's tired. I don't have time, Mom. And all of a sudden, I've noticed that the dynamic has changed. Thank you. I mean, this is awesome. So it'll re-engage me to have these conversations, because it's 5 minutes. And it started with, can you just tell me about your day? So he had something to model. Right. And it was wonderful. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll tell you about that meeting I went to over at Marriott. But it was so helpful, because he just started having the conversation with me. And then, things just opened up, and we do deep breaths every night before he goes to bed. Great. Well, he's had lots of different therapies, but that was the one thing that he does, and that his sister does, and they love it. And deep brushing, and lots of massage at the end of the day, just to kind of relax them so they can sleep. But thank you. I really appreciate it. It just kind of brought it all back.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.